Number 9. Matthew Rodriguez. 48-year-old Warren, Michigan police officer Matthew Rodriguez lost his patience while booking carjacking suspect Jaquan Smith into custody in June of 2023. Rodriguez was seen on camera punching Smith to the ground, slamming the suspect's head into the floor, and then hitting him again. The Warren Police Department fired Rodriguez upon learning of the incident. State-level charges against a former cop were dropped in lieu of a federal case accusing him of violating Smith's civil rights by assaulting him without justification. An attorney representing Smith in a $50 million lawsuit against Rodriguez and 2 other cops said that his client verbally defended himself against Rodriguez for calling him the B word. According to the lawyer, Rodriguez made the remark while Smith was being fingerprinted. Smith responded by saying that he wasn't what Rodriguez had called him, and that's when a cop began throwing punches. The federal case against Rodriguez is ongoing, but for now he's banned from working in law enforcement, possessing any guns, or having any contact with Smith. Number 8. Betty Shelby. Former Tulsa police officer Betty Shelby was on patrol one day in September 2016 when she responded to reports about an SUV that appeared to be abandoned in the middle of a 2-lane road. One 911 caller said that a man was seen running from the vehicle and saying that it was going to blow up. The person speculated that the man was on drugs because of his unusual behavior. The vehicle's owner, 40-year-old Terrence Crutcher, was standing nearby when police arrived. Sadly, the incident ended with Officer Betty Shelby fatally shooting Crutcher for allegedly disobeying police orders. According to the Tulsa Police Department, Crutcher tried reaching into his vehicle right before Shelby shot him. A medical exam revealed that the distraught motorist had PCP in his system at the time of the shooting. Lawyers representing Crutcher's surviving family members argued that the SUV's windows were rolled up when he appeared to be reaching into the vehicle. A jury ultimately acquitted Shelby of manslaughter after studying footage and videos and determining that the window to Crutcher's vehicle was in fact open and that Crutcher disobeyed the officer's orders. Despite the decision to find Shelby not guilty, the jury foreman noted that there were concerns about her ability to work in law enforcement and that several jurors weren't comfortable with Shelby being blameless for her actions. Furthermore, the foreman said that Crutcher's life could have been saved if Shelby had used her taser instead of her pistol. After being acquitted, Shelby left the Tulsa Police Department and became a sheriff's deputy in a neighboring county. The outcome of the case continues to be met with controversy and outrage, with many feeling as though Shelby got away with killing Crutcher by using excessive force. Number 7. Richard Wills. 4 months after 40-year-old Linda Mariani vanished in Ontario in early 2002, investigators' findings led them to the Richmond Hill home of her longtime lover, Toronto police officer Richard Wills. Mariani and Wills had been having an affair for 9 years when Mariani disappeared, and Wills was the last person to see her alive. Her body was found in a large garbage can behind a false wall in Wills's basement, with a jump rope wrapped around her neck and a baseball bat nearby. Prosecutors accused Wills of bludgeoning and strangling Mariani to death because she refused to leave her husband for him. He divorced his wife about 6 years into the affair, but was angry because Mariani allegedly backed out on her promise to do the same. Wills claimed that Mariani had died from a head injury after falling down the stairs. He said that he kept her body in his home because he planned to bury her at his vacation property at a later time and was afraid her family would be opposed to it. But authorities were unconvinced by the story and charged Wills with murder. The court proceedings dragged on for 5 years due to Wills's outrageous behavior. Over a 2-year period following his arrest, he transferred all his assets to his ex-wife and claimed to be poor in a bid to get his lawyer fees covered by taxpayers. When the judge denied legal assistance, he represented himself in court, but he became such a disruption that the judge eventually relented and allowed Wills to have a taxpayer-funded lawyer. Wills proceeded to fire at least 5 of the 13 lawyers he cycled through during the case. He often urinated in the back of the police cruiser that transported him to court, loudly passed gas, and belched during his hearings, and on one occasion he pulled feces out of his pants with his bare hand. A psychiatric evaluation described Wills as entitled and arrogant, and stated that he often claimed to hear voices but never appeared to be responding to internal stimuli. He also seemed coherent and was ultimately found fit to stand trial. At least one former colleague testified that Wills seemed to think that his status as a police officer would have gotten him off the hook for his crime, but their belief in honest police work prevailed, and one can only imagine that Wills's courtroom behavior spoke for itself when it came to the jury's opinion of him. Finally, in 2007, 5 years after Mariani's death, he was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life with a minimum of 25 years. Number 6. Matthew Kinney. 32-year-old mother of 4, Dominique Clayton, was fatally shot in the back of the head at her home in Oxford, Mississippi in May of 2019. Investigators quickly traced the crime to her married lover, 38-year-old Oxford police officer Matthew Kinney. And it would later be revealed that Clayton had tried to end the relationship and threatened to tell Kinney's wife about the affair. Kinney was reportedly on duty when he murdered Clayton in her sleep during what he claimed was a welfare check at her residence. According to her family, Clayton had said that she suspected she was pregnant in the weeks leading up to her death, but she was afraid to tell Kinney because he'd sternly warned her not to jeopardize his marriage. Clayton's loved ones also said that Kinney bought her a car and was planning to buy her a house when she started pressuring him to come clean to his wife. If he wasn't willing to do so, she was going to tell Kinney's wife about the affair herself. Relatives also described Kinney as possessive and controlling toward Clayton, claiming that he had a habit of sneaking into her house and making him out to be a stalker. During police questioning, Kinney admitted to the affair but denied having anything to do with Clayton's death. But authorities didn't buy it, especially since he was seen driving his patrol car around Clayton's home around the time of her murder. He eventually caved and admitted that he'd killed his mistress to prevent his wife from finding out. Kinney took a plea deal in order to avoid the death penalty and pleaded guilty to capital murder in exchange for a life sentence without parole. And in 2021, he was ordered to pay $2.2 million to Clayton's children as the result of a wrongful death lawsuit. Number 5. Tamikia Johnson. Marcus LaVar Lennons and his wife, California Highway Patrol officer Tamikia Johnson, got into an argument while out at a restaurant in early 2009. The disagreement continued as the couple drove along a highway in Riverside. Johnson pulled her BMW over on an off-ramp and told Lemons to get out of the car. She'd later tell a jury that Lemons yanked her keys out of the ignition and told her that she could walk home. According to Johnson's version of events, she began to run away from the car but became worried that Lemons would get his hands on her gun, which was still in the vehicle. She noticed that her husband appeared to be looking for the weapon, so she ran back to the car. Johnson grabbed the gun first, and the incident ended with Lemons being fatally shot. She then drove her husband to a family member's house and called 911, but it was too late to save his life. After the shooting, Johnson was placed on desk duty at her job while an investigation was carried out. She claimed that the gun discharged accidentally but was charged with murder 2 years after her husband's death. Johnson claimed that she endured years of both physical and psychological abuse by Lemons, but she was nevertheless convicted of first-degree murder and was handed a life sentence with a minimum of 50 years. All throughout the case and ever since, there's been a strong support movement advocating for Johnson's innocence and calling for the commutation of her sentence. Number 4. Vaughn Cannon. During the early morning hours of August 30th, 2023, 911 operators in Oklahoma City received a call from a terrified teenager who said he awoke to the sound of multiple gunshots coming from his mother and stepfather's bedroom. Responding officers arrived to find 41-year-old Cleveland County Sheriff's Deputy Vaughn Cannon locked in a bedroom. Bodycam footage showed the police coaxing the off-duty cop out of the room as he crawled on his stomach and cried into his phone to a family member. Inside the bedroom, the officers found 40-year-old Jordan Cannon, Vaughn's wife and fellow Cleveland County deputy, dead from gunshot wounds. According to police, Vaughn shot Jordan during a heated argument at around 2 a.m. He allegedly said that he didn't recall the entire incident, but that he remembered hearing gunshots. Vaughn surrendered to law enforcement at the urging of his uncle, who he called after the shooting. He was fired from his job following his arrest. and according to records, he's being held at the Canadian County Jail pending the outcome of the case. Number 3. Richmond Phillips. Married Washington, D.C. Vice Officer Richmond Phillips landed himself in paternity court in 2011 after getting his mistress pregnant. The night before a scheduled court hearing in 2011, he called 20-year-old Winetta Wright and asked her to meet him at a park in Prince George's County, Maryland. Wright thought that Phillips wanted to meet the daughter he had yet to acknowledge and was excited about introducing the two. She wasn't expecting Phillips to shoot her dead at the park and leave her body in the woods, but that's what happened. Phillips then stole Wright's car and abandoned it nearby, and the vehicle was found several days later. Prosecutors accused Phillips of murdering Wright to avoid paying child support and to hide his affair from his wife. He also lied to investigators about the nature of his relationship with Wright, but was connected to the crime through DNA evidence and phone records. In the end, Phillips was found guilty of 2 counts of murder and was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 20 years with no chance of parole. Number 2. Alfreda Fluker. In a complicated love triangle that eventually spiraled out of control, a Birmingham, Alabama police detective named Alfreda Fluker worked on the same police force as her common-law husband, Mario Theodore White. But one night in 2020, Fluker and White got into an argument at their home. Fluker would later testify that White showered, put on some cologne, took a Viagra pill, and then left the house. Using a phone app, Fluker tracked White's location to a nearby park, where she caught him with another woman in his vehicle. She fired several shots at the car, killing 42-year-old Kenesha Nicole Fuller. But White survived without injury. Police arrested Fluker at her mother's house the next day on suspicion of murder and attempted murder. During her trial, she claimed that she never meant to kill or hurt White or Fuller, but she admitted to shooting recklessly at the victims in a blind rage after she caught them in the middle of a steamy hookup. White denied this and said that he and Fuller were talking in his truck when the shots rang out. Fluker further testified that she and White argued after Fuller was shot and that she tried taking Fuller to the hospital, but White wouldn't let her. She claimed that Fuller moved her head and acknowledged that she was okay, which was apparently enough confirmation for Fluker to leave the scene without calling for help. A jury convicted Fluker of capital murder and attempted murder, and as a result, she was sentenced to life in prison without parole. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. Number 1. Timothy Brema. A British nurse named Claire Parry had a 10-year on-and-off-again affair with married Dorset police constable Timothy Brema, but her husband discovered the secret relationship at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020. And after going back and forth on the decision, he decided to separate from Claire, but they continued living together due to the pandemic lockdown. Around the same time, Claire discovered that Brema had had multiple affairs while treating her like she was his only mistress. Facing the end of her own marriage and feeling betrayed by her side lover, she confronted Brema outside a hotel. During the disagreement, she took Brema's phone and sent his wife a text that said, "I am cheating on you." Brema strangled Claire to death inside his car, then cut himself with a knife and called the police. He claimed that Claire had stabbed him, which he later retracted, and would later claim in court that he accidentally killed his mistress. The womanizing cop ended up telling a lot of different versions of the story to various people, including witnesses at the scene, paramedics, prison officers, regular cops, and so on. After being arrested, Brema denied a murder charge but admitted to manslaughter. The case went to trial and a jury convicted him of the manslaughter charge but acquitted him of murder. Brema was initially sentenced to 10 years in prison but had his sentence increased to 13.5 years when he appealed the case. The appeals court ruled that the judge who oversaw the original case had been too lenient in his sentencing and had failed to account adequately for aggravating factors.
10. Ali Najam. In an astonishing and appalling incident, a group of men in a BMW relentlessly pursued a work van during an unchecked fit of road rage on a Welsh highway in 2022. Footage captured by a witness showed the BMW chasing the van down a 2-lane highway at incredibly high speeds. and rushing past the van so closely that one of the car's side mirrors was knocked clear off. Both vehicles stopped a few moments later, and someone in the BMW threw a few bottles at the van. The chase then resumed, with the car blocking the van at least 2 more times before the encounter finally came to an end. At one point, all 4 men inside the BMW got out to shoot at the van's driver, Sean Powell, while kicking the vehicle and striking it with a metal bar. It's unclear what led up to the encounter in the first place, but Powell remembered feeling terrified by the situation. He said he ran red lights in a desperate bid to get away from the BMW, but his van was equipped with a speed limiter, which stopped him from being able to slam on the gas or go fast enough to lose the pursuers. The driver, 26-year-old Ali Naam, was eventually sentenced to 22 months in prison and was banned from driving for 3 years. His passengers received punishments ranging between suspended prison sentences with rehab and community service requirements to 18 months in prison for their roles in the incident. 9. SUV versus bicycle. In November 2022, people in northwest London were shocked when the driver of an expensive Jaguar deliberately rammed into a bicycle at an intersection. Footage captured from 2 different angles shows the cyclist standing in the road while talking on a cell phone, moments before the car ran over his bike. The person narrowly avoided being hit when he saw the vehicle coming forward and quickly jumped out of the way. Speaking exclusively with the website road.cc, the victim said that he agreed to remedy the situation through a community resolution instead of pressing charges. He said that it was the quickest and easiest way for him to get compensated for the destroyed bike, which was worth over $3,000, £2,500. The cyclist explained that before the cameras were rolling, the Jaguar was driving very close to him and even hit his front wheel. He stopped to try getting the driver's information, but was instead pushed to the ground. After that, the driver got back into his vehicle and rammed the bicycle, which became stuck under the car. Bystanders pulled it out while encouraging the driver to leave before the police arrived. But the driver stuck around, and the police wouldn't arrest him because he had young children in the car, according to the victim. The compensation agreement was worked out between the parties, and if the driver fails to pay up, he could be prosecuted in criminal court for serious charges. 8. Benjamin Green and Nasli Ortiz. One morning during summer 2022, Benjamin Green and his partner Nasli Ortiz got into a heated exchange with another motorist in Harris County, Texas. At some point during the fight, both cars stopped. Green allegedly got out of his vehicle and assaulted the other driver, who had a young toddler in the car. A disturbing clip later surfaced on social media, showing Ortiz firing 2 bullets at the victim's vehicle before driving off. One of the bullets grazed the victim's head, but he luckily survived with some slight swelling. The toddler in his car was also hit by some shattered glass, but luckily had no life-threatening injuries. The other bullet struck a dealership, but nobody inside was injured. Ortiz faces an aggravated assault charge, and Green was charged with assault. At her first court appearance, Ortiz apparently blamed the other driver for starting the argument and claimed she was afraid for her safety after the victim's vehicle almost hit hers. The case is ongoing, but hopefully the truth will come out. 7. Keem Parker. During the early morning of Halloween 2021, former New York City drug lord Alberto Alpo Martinez was shot and killed in his truck. The Harlem murder was clearly a targeted hit. The killer had fired multiple bullets at Martinez as he sat, striking him in the chin, chest, and arm. Police found a driver's license with the name Abraham Rodriguez in the victim's possession. It was the name Martinez had lived under since getting released from prison in 2015, when he moved to Maine to keep a low profile as part of a federal witness protection program. As part of his plea deal with prosecutors, Martinez became an informant in exchange for a reduced sentence. He spent some years in prison, but the fact that he saw freedom again after being charged with 14 murders meant that he definitely got off easier than most. The Witness Protection Program, also called WITSEC, has never lost a participant who followed all the rules, which includes staying away from past stomping grounds. But Martinez couldn't keep himself out of Harlem, and when he was shot, it was immediately believed that someone had killed him over an old beef. To everyone's surprise, though, authorities discovered that the former kingpin's death was caused by road rage instead of long-awaited payback. As it turned out, Martinez had a penchant for riding his motorcycle erratically through the streets, and some people didn't appreciate it. 27-year-old Keem Parker was charged with murder after evidence came to light that he had a long-standing grudge against Martinez from a months earlier incident. 6. Ana Jimenez. One day in 2019, 911 dispatchers in Jacksonville, Florida, got a call from a woman claiming she was hurt after her car was hit by an SUV. She said she was following the vehicle into a Target parking lot to block him from leaving, and the dispatcher told her not to if she wanted help from emergency services. The woman, later identified as Ana Jimenez, suddenly began yelling that the man was escaping, and the dispatcher reassured her that police would worry about catching him. But Jimenez ignored the instructions and chased after the SUV, which was driven by 60-year-old David James Robinson. The pursuit reached speeds of up to 100 miles per hour, 161 kilometers per hour. At one point, Jimenez rammed her Honda Civic into Robinson's Chevy Suburban, which then hit the highway's retainer wall. The chase continued before Jimenez struck Robinson's SUV another time. He lost control of the Suburban and flipped over a median, resulting in a multiple vehicle crash. 5 cars were damaged, 3 people received injuries, and Robinson was killed at the scene. Jimenez was originally charged with second-degree murder, but pleaded guilty to vehicular homicide. She was sentenced to spend 8 years in prison. 5. Dawin Jones. While driving along a highway in Hood River County, Oregon on Halloween 2022, a motorist noticed an SUV driving erratically before pulling over off onto the shoulder. The concerned civilian slowed down to get a closer look and was met with gunfire as a man stepped out of the passenger side. Neither of the 2 adults or 2 children in the car were hurt, but things could have turned out much worse. One of the bullets barely missed one of the kids and hit the car's seats. Police identified the suspect as 47-year-old Dawin Jones, the mayor of the small town of Rufus, Oregon. He was charged with 1 count of attempted murder and 4 counts of attempted assault. Jones was still locked up on a $100,000 bond when the media asked locals for their reactions. Rufus City Council President Scott Holliday told NBC News that he was surprised by the mayor's action. He described the situation as terrible and Jones as a generally good guy. Dawin pleaded not guilty to the charges and waived his right to a trial within 60 days. He remains locked up while awaiting his next court date set for February 2023. His term as mayor ended at the end of 2022, and the town has yet to announce a successor. 4. Oscar Ramos. 50-year-old Pedro Melendez Alvarado was driving on I-295 in Washington, D.C. during the typical morning rush hour in 2015 when he was fatally shot by another driver. The case went unsolved for years as authorities assumed the shooting was just the result of someone's unchecked road rage. According to the Washington Post, police received their first break in 2017 when tipsters pointed out Oscar Ramos as the suspected shooter. From there, investigators found out that Ramos believed Melendez Alvarado had murdered his father in El Salvador 15 years ago. Acquaintances claimed Ramos specifically targeted the victim for this reason, suggesting the circumstances that fueled the incident ran far deeper than road rage. Witnesses reported that Ramos created a fake Facebook profile posing as an attractive woman and had reached out to Melendez Alvarado, expressing a romantic interest. Authorities believe he then somehow lured the victim to his death. Detectives weren't able to find any concrete evidence suggesting that Melendez-Alvarado killed or was charged with killing Ramos's father, though. It's unclear where law enforcement stands on the issue, but the victim's relatives had a hard time believing Melendez-Alvarado would murder someone. They described him as a hard worker and a family man who mostly kept to himself, while devoting his life to supporting loved ones. Ramos was charged with first-degree murder and several other crimes. He pleaded not guilty, and his defense attorney has challenged the credibility of the witnesses who first implicated him, 3 of whom are members of the notoriously violent MS-13 street gang. His attorney has also pointed out that while there was extensive communication between Melendez-Alvarado and the fake Facebook account, the victim gave no details that would have made it easy for Ramos to track him down. The case is ongoing, and the truth about what happened remains unseen. 3. Christmas tragedy. 32-year-old Chris Sponhorst was driving home from his mother's Nashville home on Christmas Day 2022 when another motorist fired bullets into his door and window. First responders found him clinging to life, but he unfortunately died from his injuries just a little while later, leaving behind a grieving wife and multiple children. To say that the holiday season will never be the same for Sponhorst's family would be a severe understatement, especially as the case continues to drag on without a suspect. Authorities have appealed to the public for information that might help lead to the perpetrator, and until someone does, details of what led up to the fatal encounter will most likely stay a mystery. The victim's wife, Stephanie Sponhorst, told local station WSMV4 that there's no way her husband did anything to deserve death, further pointing toward the likelihood that the killer overreacted to an incident on the road. 2. Pablo Lyall. While stopped at an intersection on their way to the Miami airport in 2019, Mexican actor Pablo Lyall and his family were confronted by a fellow driver who claimed their vehicle had blocked him on the road. 63-year-old Juan Ricardo Hernandez got out of his car and walked over to voice his allegations. Things quickly got heated, and surveillance footage later showed that Lyall ended the disagreement by punching Hernandez straight in the face. Hernandez actually died in the hospital 4 days later from a traumatic brain injury, and Lyall was then arrested. He claimed he punched the victim out of self-defense, noting that his kids were terrified and he was afraid Hernandez had a weapon. Lyall tried to get the case dismissed based on Florida's Stand Your Ground law, but a judge refused the claim. As it turned out, the victim was unarmed during the encounter, and there wasn't enough evidence to suggest Lyall had a valid reason for thinking his life was in danger when he punched him. A jury soon convicted him of involuntary manslaughter. Lyall challenged his conviction and fought for a new trial, arguing that the evidence presented was inconsistent. But the judge upheld the ruling, and Lyall faces up to 15 years in prison for the charge. He's due for sentencing in February 2023. 1. Maurice Bellinger. 50-year-old Kea Beal was riding as a passenger in Prince George's County, Maryland in 2021 when the driver of the vehicle she was in honked their horn to avoid an accident. The other motorist then opened fire, and Kea was struck by a bullet. She died at the crime scene. Police identified 31-year-old Maurice Bellinger as the primary suspect in the shooting. He fled and was captured in North Carolina 2 weeks after the murder. Since then, authorities have released few details about what led up to the incident, other than that they believe it was caused by road rage. Shortly after Bellinger's arrest, news outlets reported that he faced charges of both first and second-degree murder, attempted first and second-degree murder, and more. Speaking with NBC Washington, Melinda Riley and Lanu Chambers commented on the senselessness of the crime. Chambers said it was sad that in this day and age, society's at a point where a person can't even go about their normal life without worrying about the threat of being harmed.
Do you think police officers should automatically lose their job for committing a felony, or are certain crimes forgivable? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.